April 15th, 1931, 3:30 p.m. Scarpato's restaurant, Coney Island. Joe the boss Masseria was finishing his lunch. Lobster fra diavolo, a bottle of Chianti, a friendly game of cards with his most trusted soldier, a 33-year-old gangster named Lucky Luciano. They had been eating for 2 hours, talking business, laughing about the old days. Masseria had no idea that in exactly 4 minutes he would be dead. At 3:34 p.m., Lucky pushed back his chair and stood up from the table. "Excuse me, boss. I need to use the bathroom." Masseria waved him off without looking up from his cards. "Go, go. I'll deal the next hand." Lucky walked toward the back of the restaurant, slowly, calmly, like a man with nothing on his mind. He pushed open the bathroom door and stepped inside. 30 seconds later, the front door of Scarpato's restaurant swung open. 4 men walked in: Bugsy Siegel, Albert Anastasia, Vito Genovese, Joe Adonis. They didn't say a word. 20 bullets. Joe the boss. Masseria was dead before his face hit the tablecloth, and Lucky Luciano was still in the bathroom, washing his hands, waiting for the gunfire to stop. When he walked back out, he looked at the body of the man who had trusted him for 15 years, lit a cigarette, and called the police himself. The Castellammarese War was over, and Lucky Luciano had just become the most powerful man in New York. The Castellammarese War was over, and Lucky Luciano had just become the most powerful man in American organized crime. But to understand how he got there, to understand why a man would sit across from his boss for 2 hours, laughing and playing cards, knowing that boss had exactly 4 minutes to live, you need to understand what New York looked like in the spring of 1931. On one side was Giuseppe Masseria, the man they called Joe the Boss. He controlled most of Manhattan, the Bronx, and Brooklyn. He had an army of 500 soldiers. He had been running the Italian underworld for a decade, crushing anyone who challenged him. On the other side was Salvatore Maranzano, a boss from Castellammarese del Golfo in Sicily, who had come to America with dreams of building a criminal empire. Maranzano was smart, educated, ruthless. He modeled himself on Julius Caesar and talked about organizing crime with military precision. Between these two titans, the streets of New York had become a battlefield. Bodies dropped every week. Soldiers switched sides depending on who was winning. Alliances formed and shattered overnight. And caught in the middle of this chaos was Lucky Luciano, Masseria's most trusted lieutenant, his top earner, the man Joe called his golden boy. But Lucky had a dangerous secret that would have gotten him killed if Masseria ever discovered it. He had been talking to the other side for months, not because he believed in Maranzano's cause, but because Lucky Luciano saw something that neither of the old bosses could see. He saw that this war would destroy everything, that the old ways, the blood feuds, the vendettas, the endless cycle of killing, would eventually bring down the whole organization and bring the law crashing down on all of them. And Lucky had a vision for something better, something that would make them all rich. The secret meetings had started 6 months earlier, in the back room of a restaurant in the Bronx. Tommy Lucchesi, one of Maranzano's most trusted captains, had reached out through a mutual contact. "Maranzano wants to talk," Lucchesi said. "He respects you, Charlie. He thinks you're being wasted under Masseria. A man with your brains should be running things, not taking orders from that fat old bastard." Lucky listened carefully. He didn't commit to anything that night, but he listened, and then he started thinking. Joe Masseria was a dinosaur, a mustache Pete, who couldn't see past his own neighborhood. He refused to work with Jews, even though Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel were the best earners in the entire city. He started wars over petty insults. He killed men for looking at him wrong. Under Masseria, there was no future for Lucky, only more blood, more chaos, more years of taking orders and handing over 60% of every dollar. Maranzano was smarter, that was true. But Maranzano wanted to be boss of all bosses, a title that would make him king. And Lucky knew that any man who wanted to be king would become a tyrant. Here was the opportunity. If Lucky helped Maranzano win, Masseria would be eliminated. Then, when Maranzano felt safe and grateful, Lucky would deal with him too. 2 birds with 1 stone. It required patience and the ability to smile at a man while plotting his murder. Lucky had both. The deal with Maranzano was simple. Lucky would deliver Joe Masseria, set him up for assassination. In exchange, Maranzano would end the war, spare Lucky's crew, and give him complete control of Masseria's territory. There was one condition: Lucky had to be there when it happened. Not pull the trigger, that would be suspicious. But he had to set the trap. He had to prove his loyalty by watching his old boss die. Lucky agreed without hesitation. He had learned long ago that sentimentality was a weakness. Masseria had given him opportunities, yes, treated him almost like a son, but Masseria was holding him back, taking 60%, refusing to work with the Jewish gangs making fortunes. In this business, loyalty was a transaction, and Joe Masseria's account was overdrawn. The date was set for April 15th. The location: Scarpato's restaurant in Coney Island, where Masseria felt safe. Lucky's only job: don't be at the table when the bullets start flying. The morning of April 15th was cold and gray. Lucky woke up early, dressed in his best suit, dark blue pinstripe, and took his time. He wasn't nervous. That was the thing about Lucky. Other men got nervous before a killing. Their hands shook, their voices cracked, but Lucky felt nothing except cold, clear focus. This was business, nothing more. He picked up Masseria at his apartment around noon. The boss was in a good mood, won big at the track the day before. "Let's go to Coney Island," Lucky suggested. "Scarpato's. The lobster is the best in the city." Masseria grinned. "You know me too well, Charlie." They drove out with bodyguards in a separate car. At Scarpato's, Lucky told them to wait outside. "The boss wants privacy. We've got business to discuss." Inside, the owner had cleared out all customers. Lucky had arranged that. Fewer witnesses meant fewer problems. They ate for 2 hours. 2 hours that felt like a lifetime. Masseria ordered the lobster fra diavolo, his favorite dish in the world. Lucky had spaghetti with clam sauce. They shared a bottle of Chianti, good wine, expensive wine, and talked about the war, about money, about victory being close. Masseria was confident. "Another few months and Maranzano is finished. His men are deserting. We just need patience." Lucky nodded. "Patience is everything, boss. You understand that, Charlie? That's why I trust you. These other guys want everything now. They don't understand that you have to wait for the right moment." Masseria leaned back. "What happens after Maranzano is gone?" "Then we run everything," Masseria said. "No more fighting, no more sharing, just us." He pointed his fork at Lucky. "You've been loyal. When this is over, you'll be my underboss, second only to me. How does that sound?" Lucky smiled warmly. "That sounds good, boss. Second to you." Lucky thought behind that smile. Forever second, forever taking orders. At 3:15, Lucky suggested cards. Masseria loved briscola. They played several hands. Masseria won most of them. He was laughing now, stacking chips. "You're distracted today, Charlie. What's on your mind?" Lucky shrugged. "Nothing, boss. Just thinking about business. Always thinking. That's what I like about you. You got a brain in that head." The clock read 3:30. Any minute now. Lucky could feel his heart beating steady in his chest. He played a few more rounds, let Masseria win again. At exactly 3:34 p.m., Lucky pushed back his chair. "Excuse me, boss. Bathroom." Masseria waved him off. "Don't be long. I'm about to clean you out." Lucky walked to the back, each step measured, calm. He pushed open the door, stepped inside and waited. Outside, Masseria hummed to himself, shuffled cards, waited for his most trusted soldier to return. He would be waiting forever. The front door opened 30 seconds later. 4 men walked in like they owned the place. Bugsy Siegel was first, wild-eyed, fearless, gun already drawn. Behind him, Anastasia, the most feared killer in New York, a man who enjoyed his work. Then Vito Genovese, Lucky's ambitious underboss. Finally Joe Adonis, closing the door. Masseria looked up from his cards. Confusion crossed his face. He recognized these men. They worked for Lucky. What were they? And then in the last second of his life, Masseria understood. His hand moved toward his jacket, toward the gun he always carried. Too slow, too old, too trusting. The first bullet hit him square in the chest, spinning him backward. Then the room exploded in a storm of gunfire. 20 shots in less than 10 seconds. Masseria's body jerked with each impact, cards scattering, wine spilling red across white cloth. When the shooting stopped, Joe the boss was slumped over the table, blood pooling across the tablecloth, the ace of spades clutched in his dead hand. Some say Lucky placed that card there himself as a message. Nobody knows for sure. The shooters vanished out the back door, and Lucky was still in the bathroom, washing his hands, waiting for silence. He waited a full minute after the last shot. Then he dried his hands, straightened his tie, and walked back into the dining room. Masseria dead at the table, blood everywhere, gunpowder in the air. Lucky looked down at the man who had been his boss for 15 years. He felt nothing, no guilt, no satisfaction, just cold recognition that this was necessary. He lit a cigarette and called the police himself. Shooting at Scarpato's restaurant, send someone. When cops arrived, Lucky was at the bar, smoking. He'd been in the bathroom, didn't see anything, didn't know anything. The detectives didn't believe him, but knowing and proving were different. 4 witnesses confirmed his alibi. Lucky wasn't talking. News spread through the underworld like wildfire within hours. Joe the boss was dead, shot 20 times in a restaurant in Coney Island. And Lucky Luciano, his most trusted soldier, his right-hand man, the man he called his golden boy, had been in the bathroom when it happened. Everyone in that world understood exactly what that meant. He'd delivered his own boss, walked away without blood on his suit. Salvatore Maranzano was delighted. He summoned 500 men and declared himself capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. Lucky would be second in command. Lucky smiled and nodded, but behind those cold eyes, he was planning. Maranzano made the same mistake. He underestimated Lucky. Within weeks, he saw Lucky as a threat. He hired Mad Dog Call to eliminate him, but Lucky had spies everywhere. He moved first. On September 10th, 5 months later, 4 men posing as IRS agents walked into Maranzano's Park Avenue office, shot him 4 times, stabbed him 6 more. The boss of all bosses was dead. Lucky stood alone at the top. But here's what made Lucky Luciano different from every boss who came before him. He didn't take the crown for himself. He didn't declare himself boss of all bosses like Maranzano had done. He didn't make that same fatal mistake. Instead, he called a meeting of every major crime family in America. Italian families from New York, Chicago, Detroit, Jewish gangs from the Lower East Side, anyone who controlled territory, anyone who made money, and proposed something revolutionary, the Commission. No boss of bosses. That title killed 2 men in 5 months. A board of directors for crime. Disputes settled by vote, not violence. Territory respected. Everyone profits. It transformed crime into a corporate empire. Rules that governed the mafia for 50 years. All started with lunch at Scarpato's. Lobster, cards, a bathroom break that lasted exactly long enough. Years later, when Lucky was living in exile in Naples, Italy, a journalist somehow got an interview with him. The journalist asked about that day at Scarpato's. Did you feel guilt? He trusted you. Lucky lit a cigarette. Joe was a good man, taught me a lot, but he couldn't change. In this business, if you can't change, you die. The journalist pressed. You sat with him 2 hours, knowing he would die. Lucky's cold eyes met his. Power isn't pulling triggers. Any fool can do that. Power is knowing when to walk away, when to be in the bathroom instead of at the table. He smiled, that thin, humorless smile that had terrified men for decades. Joe taught me everything I know about this life, including the most important lesson of all: never trust anyone completely, not even the man who's washing his hands in the next room. If this story of how Lucky Luciano orchestrated the most famous hit in mafia history gave you chills, smash that subscribe button right now. We're telling the real stories they couldn't put in The Godfather, the true history of the chairman of the mob. Drop a like if you understand why Lucky went to the bathroom at exactly 3:34 p.m. In the comments, could you sit with a man for 2 hours, knowing he had 4 minutes to live? Hit that notification bell. Next time, we're telling how Lucky created the Commission and became immortal. Don't miss it.